I've had a long career in multiple industries. If you list my sins, I sound like the worst person on earth. But if you put those against the things I've done right, it makes much more sense. The value of beauty and inspiration is very much underrated, no question. But I'm not trying to be anyone's savior. That is not I'm just trying to think about the future and not be sad. For me, it's simply this is something that is important to get done, and we should just keep doing it or die trying. And I don't need a source of strength.
So quitting is not even like...
It's not in my nature. And I don't care about optimism or pessimism. Fuck that, we're going to get it done. Tesla was under the most relentless short seller attack in the history of the stock market. Tesla was the most shorted stock in the history of stock markets. So, this was affecting our ability to hire people. It was affecting our ability to sell cars. Yeah, it was terrible. They wanted Tesla to die so bad they could taste it.
Well, most of them have paid the price.
Yes. Where are they now? Just work like hell. I mean, you just have to put in, 80 to 100 hour weeks every week. All those things improve the odds of success. So when people tell me like, well, what can you do to encourage entrepreneurs to start companies? I'm like, if you need encouragement, don't start a company. We basically messed up almost every aspect of the Model 3 production line. From cells to packs to motors, body line, the paint shop, final assembly, everything. Everything was messed up. I lived in the Fremont and Nevada factories for 3 years, fixing that production line, running around like a maniac through every part of that factory, living with the team. Yeah. I slept on the floor so that the team who was going through a hard time could see me on the floor, that they knew that I was not in some ivory tower. Whatever pain they experienced, I had it more. I mean, there wasn't any other way to make it work. There were 3 years of hell. 2017, 18, and 19 were 3 years, the longest period of excruciating pain in my life. There wasn't any other way. And we barely made it, and we were on the ragged edge of bankruptcy the entire time.
Do you feel that this challenge of figuring out the new way of manufacturing, you actually have an edge now, that it's different, that you've figured out how to do this?
At this point, I think I know more about manufacturing than anyone currently alive on Earth. Yeah. I can tell you how every damn part in that car is made. But I'm not afraid of dying. I think it will come as a relief. So,
although you may not be able to see the vision of SpaceX come true in your life.
Well, I'd like to live long enough to see that.
Being at a net worth of 230 billion, roughly, being perceived as the richest person. Do you know John Law?
I don't know.
John Law used to be the richest person on earth 300 years ago.
Okay.
He was a poker player, a gambler. He was the biggest art collector on earth, so a lot of superlatives.
Wow.
In the end, he went bankrupt.
What? That's a pretty far to fall.
Did you ever thought about that option, that something could go wrong and that you could one day lose everything?
I mean, there's been many times where I expected to lose everything. Not, I mean, who starts a car company and a rocket company expecting them to succeed? Certainly not me. I thought they both had less than a 10% chance of success. If I go bankrupt, fine, whatever. I don't care.
So many people so many young people actually, from across the globe. If you have an advice to them, young people globally who want to be like Elon Musk, what's your advice to them?
I think that probably they shouldn't want to be.
You?
I think it sounds better than it is.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not as much fun being me as you'd think. It could be worse for sure. Yeah, I mean, it's really hard starting a company. I mean, you have to basically be prepared to work constantly, from when you wake up to when you go to sleep. You have to be willing to deal with a lot of difficult problems and thorny problems. You have to be willing to deal with an enormous amount of stress. And you just got to push yourself super, super hard. I wouldn't recommend it for most people.
No.
Try to be useful. Do things that are useful to your fellow human beings, to the world. It's very hard to be useful. Very hard. Are you contributing more than you consume? Try to have a positive net contribution to society. I think that's the thing to aim for. Not to try to be sort of a leader just for the sake of being a leader or whatever. A lot of times, the people you want as leaders are the people who don't want to be leaders. So, if you can live a useful life, that is a good life. A life worth having lived. I would encourage people to use the mental tools of physics and apply them broadly in life. SpaceX, Tesla, Neuralink, and Boring Company are philanthropy. If you say philanthropy is love of humanity, they are philanthropy. Tesla is accelerating sustainable energy. This is a love of philanthropy. Right. SpaceX is trying to ensure the long-term survival of humanity with multi-planet species. This is love of humanity. Neuralink is to help solve brain injuries and existential risk with AI, love of humanity. Boring Company is trying to solve traffic, which is hell for most people, and that also is love of humanity. I would encourage people to read a lot of books. Just basically try to ingest as much information as you can, and try to also just develop a good general knowledge. So you at least have like a rough lay of the land of the knowledge landscape. Try to learn a little bit about a lot of things. Because you might not know what you're really interested in. How would you know what you're really interested in if you at least aren't doing a peripheral exploration of broadly of the knowledge landscape? And talk to people from different walks of life and different industries and professions and skills and occupations. Just try to learn as much as possible. Man's search for meaning.
Isn't the whole thing a search for meaning?
Yeah, what's the meaning of life and all, But just generally, like I said, I would encourage people to read broadly in many different subject areas, and then try to find something where there's an overlap of your talents and what you're interested in. So people may be good at something, or they may have skill at a particular thing, but they don't like doing it. Mm-hmm. So you want to try to find a thing where that's a good combination of the things that you're inherently good at, but you also like doing.
When you had that third failure in a row, did you think, I need to pack this in?
Never.
Why not?
I don't ever give up. I mean, I'd have to be dead or completely incapacitated. Essentially, the longer you do anything, the more mistakes that you will make cumulatively, which if you sum up those mistakes, will sound like I'm the worst predictor ever. But for example, for Tesla vehicle growth, I said I think we'll do 50%, and we've done 80%.
Yes.
But they don't mention that one. I'm not sure what my exact track record is on predictions. They're more optimistic than pessimistic, but they're not all optimistic. Some of them are exceeded, probably more are later, but they do come true. It's very rare that they do not come true. I mean, I don't aim to disrupt for the sake of disrupting, It's more like there's thinking about what set of actions are most likely to lead to a better future. And so, in order for, one of the things, obviously, in order for humanity to have a compelling future for civilization is that we must have a clear path to a sustainable energy future. That's one of the things that I think everyone would agree with. I'm not someone who would tend to sort of demonize oil and gas, to be clear. This is necessary right now, or civilization could not function. So I do think we actually need, and actually at this time, I think we actually need more oil and gas, not less. But simultaneously moving as fast as we can to a sustainable energy economy. I was living in the factory in Fremont and the one in Nevada for 3 years straight. That was my primary residence. Not kidding, literally.
Did you keep the couch?
I actually slept in a couch at one point in a tent on the roof. And then, but for a while there, I was just sleeping under my desk, which is out in the open in the factory, and for an important reason. And it was damn uncomfortable sleeping on that floor. And always, when I woke up, I'd smell like metal dust. Yeah, but actually, I stopped using the couch because there's a little conference room and a couch there. I stopped using the couch and I just slept on the floor under my desk, so during shift change, the entire team could see me. And this is important because, like, you know, the team, if they think the sort of their leader is off somewhere having a good time, you know, drinking Mai Tais on a tropical island, the thing is that since the team could see me sleeping on the floor during shift change, was just with nothing, they knew I was there, and that made a huge difference. And then they gave it their all.
What kind of characteristics does an entrepreneur need or have to be someone like you?
Well, I think certainly you need to be very driven and have a high pain threshold.
Elon, you are reported by Forbes and everyone else as now, you know, the world's richest person.
That's not a sovereign. You know, I think it's fair to say that if somebody is like the king or de facto king of a country, they're wealthier than I am.
So, but it's just harder to measure. But what people do, so $300 billion, I mean, your net worth on any given day is rising or falling by several $billion. How insane, insane is
bonkers,
that?
Yeah.
I mean, how do you handle that psychologically? There aren't many people in the world who have to even think about that.
I actually don't think about that too much, but the thing that is actually more difficult, and that does make sleeping difficult, is that you know, every good hour or even minute of thinking about Tesla and SpaceX has such a big effect on the company that I really try to work as much as possible, you know, to the edge of sanity, basically, because Tesla's getting to the point where probably will get to the point later this year where every high quality minute of thinking is $1 million to impact on Tesla. One of the biggest mistakes people generally make, and I'm guilty of it too, is wishful thinking. You know, like, you want something to be true even if it isn't true. And so you ignore the things that, you ignore the real truth because of what you want to be true. This is a very difficult trap to avoid. And like I said, it's certainly one that I find myself in having problems with. But if you just take that approach of you're always to some degree wrong and your goal is to be less wrong. So a challenge for entrepreneurs is to say, well, what's the difference between really believing in your ideals and sticking to them versus pursuing some unrealistic dream that doesn't actually have merit? And that is a really difficult thing to tell you. Can you tell the difference between those two things?
Right.
You know? So you need to be sort of very rigorous in your self-analysis. You guys are the magicians of the 21st century. You know, don't let anything hold you back. Imagination is the limit, and go out there and create some magic.
What Elon has to say about how he takes risks.
Anyway, I literally just try to use a scientific method, frankly, and you know, consider the you know, what is the importance of the outcome, and what is one risking in order to achieve that outcome. And but like I said, if the outcome is important enough, even if the probability of success is low, one must, I think, still do it. In my view, you know, some things are very important, and in order to have a good future, and if we don't do them, well, then we're in big trouble. And so, and then how much of a risk really is it? Because if we don't take those actions, we won't have a good future. And I think the riskiest thing would be no action. Put a lot of stock and certainly have a lot of respect for someone who puts in an honest day's work to do useful things. And just generally to have like not a zero-sum mindset, or like have more of a grow the pie mindset. Like if you sort of say, like, when we see people, like perhaps including some very smart people, kind of taking an attitude of like doing things that seem like morally questionable, it's often because they have at a base sort of axiomatic level a zero-sum mindset, and they, without realizing it, they don't realize they have a zero-sum mindset, or at least they don't realize it consciously. And so if you have a zero-sum mindset, then the only way to get ahead is by taking things from others. If it's like if the pie is fixed, then the only way to have more pie is to take someone else's pie. But this is false. Like, obviously the pie has grown dramatically over time, the economic pie. So in reality, you can have so overuse this analogy. You can have there's a lot of pie.
Yeah,
pie is not fixed.
Yes.
So you really want to make sure you're not operating without realizing it from a zero-sum mindset, where the only way to get ahead is to take things from others. Then that's going to result in you trying to take things from others, which is not good. It's much better to work on adding to the economic pie. So when I interview somebody, my interview question is always the same. I said, tell me the story of your life, and the decisions that you made along the way and why you made them. And also tell me about some of the most difficult problems you worked on and how you solved them. And that question, I think, is very important, because the people that really solved the problem, they know exactly how they solved it. They know the little details. And the people that pretended to solve the problem, they can maybe go one level and then they get stuck.
Are you happy at the moment?
I think there's degrees of love, but certainly for one to be fully happy, I think you have to be happy in work and happy in love. I suppose I'm medium happy. There are degrees of happiness.
Can love for projects, for work, compensate love among people?
I think love of work, in my experience, can at best make one halfway happy.
What was your biggest challenge in life?
One of the biggest challenges, I think, is making sure you have a corrective feedback loop, and then maintaining that corrective feedback loop over time, even when people want to tell you exactly what you want to hear.
Okay.
That's very difficult. I think the first is, depending upon how well you want to do, and particularly if you're starting a company, you need to work super hard. So what does super hard mean? Well, when my brother and I were starting our first company, instead of getting an apartment, we just rented a small office and we slept on the couch. And we showered at the YMCA, and we had just one computer. So the website was up during the day, and I was coding at night. 7 days a week, all the time. Work hard, like every waking hour. That's the thing I would say, particularly if you're starting a company. And I mean, if you do simple math, you say, like, okay, if somebody else is working 50 hours and you're working 100, you'll get twice as much done in the course of a year as the other company. I think too is you got to make sure that that whatever you're doing is a great product or service. It has to be really great. And I go back to what I was saying earlier, where if you're a new company, I mean, unless it's like some new industry or new market that, if it's an untapped market, then you have more ability to, the standard is lower for your product or service. But if you're entering anything where there's an existing marketplace against large entrenched competitors, then your product or service needs to be much better than theirs. It can't be a little bit better, because then you put yourself in the shoes of the consumer and they say, why would you buy it as a consumer? You're always going to buy the trusted brand unless there's a big difference. So a lot of times entrepreneur will come up with something which is only slightly better. And it's not, it can't just be slightly better. It's got to be a lot better.
The other thing I'd say is that if you're creating a company or if you're joining a company, the most important thing is to attract great people. So either join a group that's amazing, that you really respect, or if you're building a company, you've got to gather great people. I mean, all a company is a group of people that have gathered together to create a product or service. And so depending upon how talented and hardworking that group is, and the degree to which they are focused cohesively in a good direction, that will determine the success of the company. So do everything you can to gather great people if you're creating a company. Then I'd say focus on signal over noise. A lot of companies get confused. They spend money on things that don't actually make the product better. So, for example, at Tesla, we've never spent any money on advertising. We put all of the money into R&D and manufacturing and design to try to make the car as good as possible. And I think that's the way to go. So for any given company, just keep thinking about, are these efforts that people are expending, are they resulting in a better product or service? And if they're not, stop those efforts. And then I think that the final thing I would encourage you to do is, now is the time to take risk. You don't have, you don't have kids, but as you get older, your obligations increase. And once you have a family, you start taking risk not just for yourself, but for your family as well. It gets much harder to do things that might not work out. So now is the time to do that, before you have those obligations. So I would encourage you to take risks now. Do something bold. You won't regret it.
I was always sort of really interested in reading when I was a kid, and I read everything that I could get my hands on. I read the encyclopedia probably age 9 or 10. Well, and not that I actually wanted to read the encyclopedia, but I ran out of things to read, so in desperation I read the encyclopedia. I just sort of got bored easily, and so unless I was doing something like reading or playing a video game or watching TV, and we had like terrible TV in South Africa. It was really bad TV. So there was only at best, there wasn't that much of it, so boredom, yeah, so boredom led to a lot of reading.
Oh, I read thousands and thousands of books. You know, I like the sort of Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit and that kind of thing. And I was 14, 15, I started reading some of the philosophers, Nietzsche, Schopenhauer, that sort of thing, by people like Dostoevsky. Oh, brutal. Most of the philosophers are really, they're awful. I mean, they're so depressing, and they just, you know, some of the things they say are good ideas, and then it's interspersed with so much rubbish. But I was sort of, you know, early teen years trying to figure out the meaning of the universe and all that, and it was very difficult to come up with anything that wasn't some piece of arbitrary claptrap. The question is harder than the answer. Really, it's the question that's the hard part, and that takes a much bigger computer than Earth to figure it out. I think there's some truth to that. When we ask questions, they come along with all of our biases, and so there are so many things implied in the question that you should really ask, is that the right question? And that's very hard to figure out.
Well, I think you learn a lot depending upon whose life you're reading about. There are lots of lessons in there. I read Isaacson's biography of Jobs, which I thought was quite interesting, and I actually really liked his biography of Benjamin Franklin, who I would say is certainly one of my heroes. He seemed like a really great guy. Since I'm traveling so much, and that I often find I'm reading the books on my iPhone, which may sound like, wow, this is really tiny, but honestly, the book I'm reading, which I was sort of thinking, should I say this or not? But it's a book on Howard Hughes. Maybe a cautionary tale. Try to learn as much as possible that allows you to predict the future or make the future. So the saying is the best way to predict the future is to make it. And then assess whether what you're learning is enabling you to predict the future with less error. Are you less wrong? We're always wrong to some degree. But can you reduce the error on your future predictions? I think that's the way to look at education. As of course, but it's both create the future, and predict the future. So that includes art and all those other things. But close the loop on being less wrong about future. I would say that's the right way to think about education. I mean, the way education works right now, it's extremely low bandwidth, it's extremely slow. Lectures are the worst, really. It's like very slow. Try to predict the future with less error. This is very hard, as you were saying. I'm not sure it's 99.9%, but it's not very good, generally, a prediction of the future. But I think often people don't try. The first thing is try. If you don't try, okay, you got to try, and then adjust based on the error of your prior predictions. Well, I studied physics, and I'd certainly strongly recommend physics as a good grounding to understand the nature of reality. I mean, physics is fundamentally just understanding how does the universe actually work. And then that's a good foundation for then a variety of engineering disciplines. And I think also the analytical principles, the sort of analytical constructs used in physics apply to basically anything. Physics developed all these ways of thinking, like first principles thinking, thinking about things in the limit of high and low, testing your hypothesis. It's the scientific principle, essentially. These things are incredibly helpful in all arenas. Yeah, well, there's a lot of technical problems to solve. So I guess if we sort of, started studying kind of engineering and physics and biosciences and that kind of thing, would be the way to go. There are going to be a lot of problems to solve to make a city work on Mars. We were thinking of just as sort of a semi-joke, putting a job description on our website for urban planner in brackets Mars. There's going to be just a tremendous amount of problems to solve. There's just a lot of building and problem solving. So those are like the right, skills to work on if someone's interested in going beyond Earth or space in general. Basically, I sort of was thinking about this when I was a kid, and trying to find some meaning in life. Like, what's the meaning of life? Basically, the universe is the answer, and you just need to figure out the questions. So I think, that's if I can help kind of figure out the questions, then I consider that to be meaningful.